Coaster Kings Radio.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 4 of Coaster Kings. I'm a little tired. It's 1 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever it is. We are going to be talking about Japan a lot today. So Kawaii, everyone.
The Kawaii Coaster Kings podcast special.
Yeah, and you say it's morning, like, you say it's evening, but here it's like morning, 7 a.m., so I just woke up, my hair is all everywhere, but...
everyone is really tired.
Japan
We timed it really nicely. Yeah,
but I really think the best podcasts happen when everyone is delirious. I think it's funnier that way.
We don't have a plan, so everything you hear is non-rehearsed.
We just
today.
talked about this.
Well, we do have a little bit of a plan. Like,
we have a small plan.
Tiny plan.
A tiny plan. I'm the Japanese noob, and so I'm going to ask you some questions.
He's a weeb noob.
Yeah.
A weeaboo noob.
And I want to know everything about, well, at some point in my life, I definitely want to visit Japan, hopefully sooner or later, but I still need to hit Orlando first, though.
That's okay, you can come visit us first, we'll tell you more in person.
But once I do, well, I take a flight to Tokyo, I suppose. I arrive at the airport, and then I'm like, okay, I want to do theme parks, but I have no clue whatsoever where to go. Where do I go?
Best thing to do.
Where do I start?
So there's this lovely little website, and it is called... What's the website called again? The one we used for the metro.
Oh my god, I can't remember. Our friend Mark Lacombe was using this website. It was a system that allowed you to map out train routes and stuff like in advance. I didn't even think we were going to bring that up.
Yeah, so there's
I guess it would make sense.
So there's a website, and hopefully by the end of the episode we'll remember what it is. So you have to listen the entire way through. There is a website that you use, and you type in your starting position and then your end destination. It'll give you a bunch of different options, a bunch of different times a day, how to get anywhere using what color lines and what the names of the stations and the platforms are. And all these names are weird in Japanese, and they all sound the same. But the great thing is that this is a really, really useful guide that when you use it, you can easily make your way around Japan without much of a need of any assistance. Now, most people speak English there. It's not like everyone speaks English, but it's definitely a lot better than China. People will understand you. You can ask for help.
There's probably more than one. I would just Google, like if you just Google like rail maps and stuff for cities and stuff, there are multiple websites where you enter the station that you're closest to. You know, if you're wandering around the city or if you're at the airport and you're going to your hotel, you know.
What you do want to get is you want to get some cash out before you go to your transportation, and you want to get a Suica card. It's like a little penguin on the card, and it's spelled Suica, Suica. It's super cute because everything in Japan is super kawaii.
It's just your rail pass.
And that you can use anywhere. And then the best way to get...
For Americans, the whole rail pass thing is pretty exciting. For Europeans, it's like
another day.
It's another metro system. No big deal.
Now, in order to get around the country isn't that large, but if you want to get between major cities like Osaka, Tokyo, Nagoya...
You take the Shinkansen.
Which is like the
bullet train? Okay,
yeah,
I've heard about that.
Train.
They're actually a lot more expensive than we thought they would be. Even a slower
But it kind of makes sense.
Expensive.
It's sort of like flying on an airplane that never leaves the ground. You're just getting to takeoff sequence, and then you just keep going until you're at where you're.
So that's the kind of train where they're apologizing when they left 24 seconds early?
Oh, totally. You have 60 seconds per station. Yeah. We're trying to get in the train with 300 people.
Yeah.
And we had like everything lined up, and we're like in position to run into these doors. It was pretty crazy.
It was, and then the train, the platform attendants with the white gloves, stuffing people into the train.
Now the Shinkansen is not something we really noticed because it's like expensive, luxury, high speed.
I guess
travel.
That's more like the smaller.
But, like, it gets busy like on the metros and stuff, which you want to use when you land first.
Really, the nicest. Japan is just so user friendly because everyone there is so nice. I hope that's an appropriate like sweeping generalization to make, but I feel like virtually everyone in Japan is really polite and nice and will help you buy the right train ticket or be walking in the right direction. Like, it's like the most user-friendly
And if you
country.
have one thing I would advise, if you do travel overseas, make sure that your domestic phone company knows you're traveling and set up some sort of plan in advance so you can use internet in a different country.
Also, tell your bank.
Tell your bank as
Tell
well.
your bank.
Make sure that everyone or everything you rely on is aware that you're going to be in Japan, and then getting around is not hard. You just make sure you have access to things by having phone access and having like money access.
Even if you don't have a cell signal, like everything has Wi-Fi everywhere. So
but what I've heard, that
too.
Japan is one of the countries in Asia which is the most accessible because it's has a Western vibe to it.
Oh,
definitely.
You know what I call it? I call it the Germany of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
It literally feels like you're in Germany. Like the sterileness of the buildings, the way that people, like the way stores are organized, the way roads are laid out, the way public transportation's set up. I got such Germany vibes. It was just there's Asians walking around.
And so much of it is like new. It's only been like in the last 60 years that Japan has dove into like Westernization, as locals and immigrants in the region often call it. So yeah, there's a lot of creature comforts because it's for tourists from the U.S. and from Europe for that reason, because of like the cultural cues that they've latched onto for the last half a century or so.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, and so
including roller coasters.
well, talking about coasters, would you first go to Japan itself to hit the credits there, because they're in the city center, I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, in Tokyo?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually what we did is our flight, we didn't really have plans for our first evening because, like, you never know what's going to happen. And you never know how tired you're going to be. But, like, we rolled into our hotel and we checked in and we still had some daylight. So we went straight to Tokyo Dome City, which I think is in the Bunkyo district. It's a really...
It's the nice thing about Tokyo Dome City is that it's kind of like in the middle of Tokyo, so it's easy to get to from a lot of places.
Yeah,
Tokyo is big,
it's very
but it's
central
accessible
to like main metro Tokyo. So like it's wherever you happen to be staying, you're never far, I don't think, from the Tokyo Dome, and that's where Thunder Dolphin is. They're like 20% smaller Millennium Force
with the same amount of force and the same amount of no force.
The same amount of force or lack thereof. I love Thunder Dolphin though. It's such a beautiful ride, and it's like the quintessential Japanese experience. I went once in 2017, and then we went 2 separate times because we got to the hotel, we checked in, and we went straight to Tokyo Dome and rode it just because we could, and we were there. And we were there for the 2018 American Coaster Enthusiast Tour, and
which didn't start till about 5 days later.
Yeah,
we kind of came in early before we went to Hong Kong.
Yeah, and so we knew that we were going to be there again with Ace, but we wanted to go in advance just because we could. A lot of parks in Japan do not have the best operations. It's better than like some of the horror stories you hear in China, but like Thunder Dolphin has very slow dispatches. Everyone is, and I think it's just because like it's a leisure activity through and through. Like it's you go there and you behave leisurely, and the workers, like the ride attendants and stuff, are generally
excited,
working in a leisurely at a leisurely pace. So it's not so much like the culture is like very into efficiency.
But not when it comes to ride.
But not when it comes to amusement park rides as much, unless it's Tokyo Disney or like.
Yeah.
But even like Universal Studios is not.
Even Universal Osaka was nowhere near as efficient as it should have been.
It's like it's just a relaxed space, and everybody's trying to unwind. And I think like no one seems bothered by like the sluggishness, and you kind of get used to it. Like I wasn't that bothered by it there by the end, because it was just I just was like, okay, like we're in Japan, we're doing things the Japan way, and that's totally fine. I don't know if everyone agrees with me, but for me, I just kind of got used to it, and I'm like, all right, we're gonna get one ride on each coaster in 4 hours, at this park with 4 coasters, and and you just get used to that, and that's just the way it is. But then you kind of just take it for what it is, and you enjoy. Yeah. We spent a lot of time just enjoying the atmosphere of parks and not so much worrying about getting multiple rides on things, because a lot of times you just can't.
Yeah.
Like,
now the nice thing about Tokyo Dome City is the fact that it's located in a very nice, spiffy, new shopping center.
mall. Yeah.
So everything is clean, everything is aesthetically pleasing, and a lot of the smaller Japanese parks we went to, they were run down. They really weren't that nice of places to be at.
Yeah.
But Tokyo Dome City, very, very
About
nice.
10 years
Very
ago,
fun.
Japan was going through a recession, kind of like what the United States was, and the theme park industry suffered.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of parks closed. There was an incident at one of the parks in Osaka where there was an accident and there was someone died, and there was a lot of changes that were made to the safety protocol for Japanese theme parks, and there were some parks that couldn't afford to make the changes that were necessary for them to legally continue operating.
Mm-hmm.
And so several of those, there were about a dozen parks that closed for that reason, and then there have a lot of the parks that survived have been struggling to stay open because of the financial hit that they took as a result of this incident, because of the economy. So some of that's reflected in the parks, but the parks that are open, that stayed open, which is majority of them, there seems to be a lot of progress. Even in the parks that dealt with setbacks. Tokyo Dome City had 3 coasters at one point, 3 or 4, simultaneously. And then as of a few years ago, they only had 1, Thunder Dolphin, just because of ridership and operating costs and things. And they're like, well, we're going to focus on keeping the big coaster open.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not worry about some of the smaller stuff.
Yeah.
But they just opened a new coaster a few months ago. A little like Pegasi Express at Park S.
Panic
or Fire Chaser
coaster
Express.
back then.
Yeah, that ride, it was a dark ride, apparently. They had
It must have been under construction when we were there.
Yeah.
I just had no clue.
there was no indication that
anything
a new
coming.
coaster was happening, and it opened 3 months after we went, and it looks so cool. But stuff like that, these oddball indoor coasters that Japan is doing, and all this space efficient light show, and multi-sensory.
I think my favorite one is Spin Runway.
Spin Runway at Yomiuriland.
Yomiuriland.
It's a Gerschlauer spinning coaster in the dark where you starts out as a dark ride where you go through a fashion factory, and then you go up a spiral lift hill where you play a video game.
Where you have to dress up a dog, which is the character of the park.
buttons on your lap bar. And then you go through the ride, and you're
it's a spin runway, but the finale
and
is
then,
the big
and then the brake run
carpet.
is the red carpet.
So that's pretty cool. And it's themed to a fashion factory.
Yeah.
Because it's a bunch of factories. Of
Yeah.
course, Japan has theme
It's the
parks
most
themed to factories.
quintessentially Japanese thing, I think.
But
ever.
inside the factory is a spin.
But yeah, this is that's not Toshima, Yomiuriland.
Yeah.
And that was a park. They built a coaster back in 2014, an El Loco coaster that was open for 3 hours, and then it broke down, and it never reopened. And they just took the loss and demolished it, and that's a major setback. This is another park that dealt with a lot of setbacks.
The nice thing with this park, though, is
But
that it's in
resilient.
the metro. It's in the metro of Tokyo.
It's in the metro.
It's not as hard to get
It's
to as
accessible.
some other parks are, which are located nowhere.
There's some parks
near.
in the middle of freaking nowhere, and it's
Nagashima Spotland is this half-hour
isolated.
drive off these local service streets. It's kind of funny.
So did you go? You didn't go by public
go
transport
ahead.
to Nagashima?
Nagashima, no.
Because we were on the ACE tour, we took buses between a lot of the major cities. A lot of this stuff, it's definitely easier than most places to get to the parks in this country.
Especially the major parks like Universal and Disney have their own train stations.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but
Well,
even
it's
when we
even
went to
on the Metro map, Fuji-Q Highland, there's a couple of stations in the Mount Fuji area, but Fuji-Q Highland also has its own station.
And even places like we went to an aquarium, they had their own station for the aquarium. So it's really not that. There's public transportation everywhere you go. So even it may take a little bit longer. Than
In some
we used
places,
to,
you
but
can very easily get a bus,
Okay.
a bus ticket, a bus ride or something too. One of the parks, there was a park that we were going to visit, Park España, Shima, Spain Village.
How funny is that?
There
A theme
was
park themed only to a country.
Yeah,
Europa Park, step aside. We're only doing Spain.
just Spain. We were going to go there, but then a typhoon happened, so we didn't go. But we were looking at returning at some point, and you can apparently you can very easily take a bus to that park
Okay.
from Nagoya. So it's good to know that like even when we're not there with a tour with like guided coaches and stuff, that like it's still doable. Like we can get to some of these obscure places on our own.
Now, before we hit the big parks, the park where where Thunder Dolphin is,
Tokyo Dome City.
Tokyo Dome City. Are there any other rides that you must do while you're there?
They have an Intamin log flume.
Pretty cute.
Themed to a popular sports drink called Pocari Sweat.
What? Sweat?
Pocari Sweat. And and it's not ironically like it's because you drink it because you sweat a lot and when you play sports, and so that's
Stay
what you
hydrated,
drink it
kids.
for. It has electrolytes and stuff in it. And then they have an Intamin parachute drop like from the 80s.
And that one still works.
Like that not. And it's still, and
you still stand up.
Still stand up in
You
it.
still commit suicide off the thing.
Yeah, you can still pull a Knott's Berry Farm and just throw yourself from the top if you were so inclined. I don't think that's happened.
It's one way to die.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you're gonna, I don't know. No, let's not go down that road. But yeah, so aside from the two coasters, obviously, the other two major intimate rides in the park are must rides.
And other than that, they are really into Pokemon there. So you can get a Pokemon
Gotta catch 'em all.
collector's book.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. You can go all around Tokyo Dome City, and there's like things you collect, photo ops. There's like queues and queues to
It's
get
like
your free
like Pokemon Go.
Pokemon
it's
Go
like-
on paper,
It's
pretty
all
much.
of this stuff.
Yeah. So that
related
was
to Pokemon
something people
Go.
really into.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And there's good pizza there.
Pizza.
Pizza.
And what about Yomiuriland?
Yomiuriland.
That was good
That's
pronunciation.
the Spin Runway Park. I love that
Spin
park.
Runway Bandit, which was the first hypercoaster that inspired Magnum XL200
Yeah.
at Cedar Point. It was a wild coaster, but it was, like most Togo or Japanese manufactured coasters, the trains are so uncomfortable. Like, they fit, like, Japanese-sized people, but not Americans. Or Europeans.
I think
for that matter.
Bandit.
It's small.
Bandit. I think is that one. I can't remember if that one's Togo or Meshio.
It's Togo.
Yeah, okay, it's Togo. In Japan, like the concept of a quote jet coaster, which is a large steel coaster that goes through usually shallow drops and wide turns, and they're usually not particularly thrilling, but they first came out in the 60s, and they kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger until they became small hypercoasters, and that's what Bandit is. It opened in 1988, and apparently Dick Kinzel was watching the news and saw Bandit on TV and was like, I need this for Cedar Point. And so that's how Magnum was built. In fact, if I remember correctly, they wanted to go. Yeah, it was Togo, because I remember now. They wanted originally Cedar Point wanted to go with Togo because they wanted something as similar to Bandit as possible. But the U.S. dollar was not very strong in Japan at the time, so Aerodynamics stepped in and said, "We can build you something stateside for cheaper." So they settled for for Magnum instead of something more akin to a Togo with shoulder harnesses.
That's one of the problems on that ride. So it's kind of a hypercoaster with several interesting rough transitions. So you go on the first lift, obviously the only lift, and
No, it has a lift at the end. Remember?
Oh, that's true.
Like
your
a
first
brake
drop-
run, like
Your
catch
first drop
kind of
is
thing.
great, and then you're like, okay, this is not too bad. And you make a pretty okay turn, and then it has another big drop, and it slams into
Into
this
a
giant
helix.
upward helix. It just kind of slams into way too much speed, and it's like 100 feet tall.
Like it very gradually
helix.
starts to bank you for the helix, and
And
then the actual helix
Just
starts,
hit it.
and you feel like you're gonna face plant, which is
hit
why
it.
the shoulder harness is there. Also, it
so that's
hits
what made
its
the ride pretty
maximum. It goes like
uncomfortable.
65 miles per hour, but it hits that like halfway through the ride because it goes like midway through the ride. It drops down into a ravine. This thing just hauls ass. Like it's such a cool ride. I wish it had good trains.
I wish it was
because
comfortable.
It could be amazing if it had trains like Fujiyama.
Didn't they make a Splash Bandit for a bit?
Yeah, they had like
Splash Bandits.
where
Splash
you would
Pad.
get hit with water during
Yeah,
the
they would
ride.
hit you
Okay.
with water several
Yeah.
times during the ride.
Uh,
Because
Yeah,
Japan.
Japanese people like that, I've heard. And talking about water rides, there is one water ride there, the Splashing UFO Rapid River. Did you do that one?
Yes.
Oh
It's
yeah,
the ramen
one-
themed
the
ride.
ramen-
Did you know
ramen
that
flume.
the interactivity is from the Belgian company Alterface?
Oh, really?
Really?
I mean-
So I
That was the best
I
ride
saw
of the
that
day.
ride in one of their press releases, and it really looks like a lot of fun. Like the interactive element that if you don't push enough the buttons, that you get soaking wet.
Yeah, there was.
I don't even push any button.
Everyone has a button. It's sort of like Spin Runway,
Mm-hmm.
where your lap bar has a button or two on it, and you there's different segments of the ride where you pause, and there's a screen above you, and there's some kind of supervillain.
Who's gonna turn you to ramen, right?
Like super
ramen
villain, like
monster.
SOUPER.
The Kettleman.
Super.
So he's like stirring everything up, and then it's like a revenge, and then you go again. There's like a drop. There's like a big
It
helix
was
drop.
wonderfully strange.
It was
I
really weird.
just was so taken.
It was really just a big warehouse with
Yeah,
like
they have
some
this
screens
area
in
of the
there,
park that's just warehouse themed.
which
And
is
there's
where Spin Runway
a car
is too.
factory themed
Okay.
ride that was sort of like test track, but without the fast part. And then the Spin Runway Fashion Factory, and then the UFO Noodle Factory.
Well, I'm surprised not more
that park-
parks have this. Like, it sounds so.
I think it's only a
original.
matter of time. The Sega Joypolis Park in Tokyo has a spinning Gerschlauer that's launched and also has a barrel roll, and it's also a rhythm game.
Which is actually pretty fun.
Which
It's
was
kind of like Tap
which
Tap
was
Revenge
really
to
fun.
ride.
Yeah, it was like
The
Dance Dance Revolution, but
Dance
with your
Dance
hands. And like you would go through these slow parts of the ride where the screen was in front of you and the screen moved with you. I had no idea what was going on, but I just really liked it. Like, that's actually kind of Japan in a nutshell. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I like it. And then, one more thing at Yomiuriland, their stand-up coaster that's also a sit-down coaster. It's a Togo
What's it called again?
Mamanga, which
Mamanga
is Japanese
stand
for
loop
flying
coaster.
squirrel.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It has two. It has
okay.
two track. Or it's one track, but like a sliding station, kind of like Mr. Freeze. And there's a sit-down train and a standing train, and there's two separate queues, and you can choose whether you want to sit or stand.
This stand-up train was added later, and the clearance is so incredibly freaking small.
Put your hands down. If you're
We
a
were
Westerner,
riding that
if you're
and-
over 6 feet tall, put your hands down.
First of all, it's really hard to get into these Togo trains anyways because they're not that
Oh yeah,
like
this
the
was your
standard
first
trains.
Togo. Your first
And
Togo
so-
stand-up.
They aren't that big to begin with, so I was like, okay, great. I feel so insecure. Like, just my shoulders are the only thing that are sort of held in there, and everything else is kind of exposed.
Sven, did you ride Skyrider
Yes.
at Canada's
Luckily,
Wonderland?
it was
Okay.
still
So
there.
you know what I'm talking about.
But now it's
Yeah,
closer
yeah,
even
'cause-
to go.
Yeah, and now
That's
it's
true.
now it's in Italy. I had ridden King Cobra at Kings Island the year before it was demolished, and then Shockwave at King's Dominion. But this was Sean's first Togo stand-up.
And we go down the drop into the loop, and we clear the lift hill, and I can't believe I don't
Yeah,
think
the
I've
lift hill
ever
thread
been
is
that
the
incredibly
loop thread's
frightened
the
on
lift
any
hill.
coaster.
And
It was completely scary.
Wild.
And then there's
Unbelievable.
this part where like you barely clear or support. It was just the envelope was barely made for a sit down coaster,
Yeah.
and then you put these stand up coasters on there, and then you put a
it was never something that
200 centimeter
Togo
tall
worried
dude on
about,
that.
like clearances, like hand envelopes. In fact, when King's Dominion built Shockwave, they had to the turn after the brakes into the station. There's like just a U-turn into the station, and the train after the helix midway through the ride, it would pass under this turn, and they had to take the spine of the track and remove it from that turn going into the station because you could conceivably put your hands up and just smack the heck out of your hand on the spine. And they figured this out because someone working at the park had the wherewithal to be like, hey, like, this clearance feels really low. I bet if we like parked the train here and I put my hand up, I could grab the spine of the track. And he did.
Oh wow.
That's exactly what happened.
it's probably about 5 or 6 moments on
Yeah.
Mamanga Loop Coaster,
Yeah.
which does a loop and a helix.
Yeah, and Mamanga is a
That's
very
it.
simple ride, but it left a very lasting impression.
Yeah, it's ranked pretty high for me, but I'm pretty sure someone can get killed.
Yeah,
not
probably.
too.
Okay, annoying
Or,
question.
yeah.
Do you consider it as 1 or 2 coasters?
We counted it as 2. I know we're terrible. I'm sorry. We waited in line for it twice, and it took forever. So we're counting it as 2. Okay?
Also, these are 2 completely different ride experiences.
Totally different experiences.
Like one is uncomfortable.
Sit down
it's
train
so small.
was boring and uncomfortable. The stand up coaster was
just too frightening,
outstanding and terrifying.
Okay,
So,
but I do agree. I
that's
would
our
also
theory.
count it as 2 coasters. So
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like we count like Patriot at Great America and like Rougarou and like Firebird that's opening at Six Flags America. Like we count all those as 2 credits.
Yeah,
It's hard for us not
different
to.
experiences.
When the rolling stock, like when the type of coaster that you're riding changes, it's like a challenge for me not to count it.
okay.
We could talk all day about like what is a credit and what isn't.
But that's
we're
not the
just gonna
point of
leave it at
this
that.
episode. Let's go
No.
to one of the big parks. How about
Okay,
Fuji-Q?
okay.
Fuji-Q Highlands. It's Japan's Six Flags Magic Mountain, but Six Flags Magic Mountain is still better.
Yeah.
So
Fuji-Q is actually not very big.
It's
It
actually
has
super
big
small.
coasters. It's like Roller Coaster Tycoon, where you have this small map, but everything you want to build is like over
Kinda
200
sticks
feet
out.
tall, and so you just have like this narrow little midway with like giant.
Yeah,
$20
it's really
million roller
yeah. So
coasters.
Fujiyama cuts into the parking lot. Dododonpa is kind of circling
Wraps
part
around
of
the
the
whole park. Yeah.
Ishineika starts at the end of the park and runs all the way to the front of the park.
Yeah.
So literally, the length of Ishineika is the length of the park.
Yeah.
And then we have Takabisha, which kind of has its own field,
Yeah.
kind of
That was in
sticking
a
out
parking
too.
lot or
So
something.
the park,
like
the
that,
park itself is really small.
Yeah.
But
Fuji-Q,
They have 4 of the best
Fuji-Q,
coasters in
Dodonpa, and Takabisha, the entrances are all right next to each other.
all the entrances,
like
of the
in
park.
a row,
Like you enter the park,
and they're
and
right
then
there.
within like a half-minute
Like,
walk,
yeah,
Takabisha.
like a few paces.
Yeah, it's literally like a couple
few
feet from
hundred
each other.
from
Yeah.
each other, and then Ijinika's on the other side.
And so waiting time wise,
Terrible.
which one would you do first?
Nightmare. Dododonpa. Because Dododonpa goes down the first, and the vehicles only carry 8 people per vehicle, and it is the ride that goes down the very first thing. Like it only ran for like half an hour, and we got on it.
It was raining, and we knew it was going to rain all day, so we were like, if we get on, we prioritized, and we were like, let's get on everything we can, but we have to ride first priority, second priority, and so on. So we agreed. We had a small group. It was
It's
myself,
actually just you
Sean.
and me.
Yeah, and well, we had Derek and Doug Perry.
yeah,
were
they
pretty
kinda-
much the Perry
know,
twins. They're DJs based in Los Angeles, and they're good friends of ours. And they were on the Japan trip, and they were basically, we kept running into them because
They did the same thing we did.
they
had
had
a
the
good
same
system.
priorities as us because they were out for blood just like we were. So we went straight for Dodonpa and got the credit, and that was the one that I was the most excited about, and the one I was the most disappointed by.
It's our least favorite coaster at Fuji-Q.
So you didn't do it before when it didn't have the looping?
No, I wished, but no, we did not. We did it with the loop.
Yeah.
And it sucks because the transition into the loop is super rough.
Yeah.
Like, it's like smack to the side.
Wow.
The launch itself is great, but it's not that great.
The launch was underwhelming. I like Accelerator's launch better.
It also has to do with the fact that these trains are giant. You have this giant seat you sit in with a giant restraint. You're like really
The
packed
best
in.
restraint, yeah.
I mean, it's really good for like, because it's a pretty big impact, but the launch is quick. And then after that, after the launch, you just kind of coast for like half a minute. You're just coasting through the park. You're going fast, but like it doesn't do anything. You're just going really fast.
This ride was incredibly
I've been on
expensive,
fast coasters
and
before.
it really doesn't do a whole lot.
Yeah, I would say Kidney costs better.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. So,
But we
the
were
loop
happy.
is okay.
We were happy to get on that one first because of the bragging rights. You know, everyone wants to
Yeah.
say they've been on the
Fastest
fastest
accelerating
accelerating coaster in the world. Even though I'm not even sure that that's true because the ride has no operational need to go 111 miles
because it
per hour.
speeds you down quite a bit before the loop.
So yeah, our theory. Someone
Okay.
actually on the tour, our friend Nathan Firesheets was the one who brought us up to that and was like, you know, I don't even think this ride goes near that fast because it never needed to. And so the fact that it didn't feel like it went that fast is probably because it probably didn't. The next coaster we rode, our next highest priority, which was our favorite of the day, I think. Well, maybe
It was
I
a
guess-
favorite of the day, but not the most impactful.
okay, yeah, favorite of the day. The only one that we rode twice was Fujiyama.
Which is that Togo hypercoaster that everyone, once upon a time, seemed to hate, but it's an incredible hypercoaster. Like one of my favorite hypercoasters.
Apparently, it had a train. It did a rolling stock switch, and it changed a lot of the
Trains are-
negative.
a lot of
reviews. The
leg
trains are
room,
fabulous.
nice.
Rolling stock switch?
Yeah, the
Vehicle
trains,
change.
new
Okay.
vehicles. Yeah, the updated trains. We thought it tracked really well. Really, really intense the whole way through.
Crazy airtime. Like this. At one point, halfway through the ride, it just dives down about 120 feet drop, and it just hits bank turn.
Oh yeah, right at the end of the ride, there's a dirt turn that's like at ground level.
And you dive into it from
100
feet.
It was so different. It's the style of design for this hypercoaster is so different from any other hypercoaster we've been on.
And it's tall. How is it? Like
262 feet.
It's taller than Goliath.
It held the record for a while. Because Pepsi Max Big One and Desperado had the record in 1994, and then when Fujiyama opened in 1996, it was the tallest coaster in the world and the only one in excess of 250 feet, and then Superman at Magic Mountain then took the record away, but it was still the tallest full-circuit gravity-powered coaster until Goliath at Magic Mountain opened, and then a month later Millennium Force.
Well, Goliath's only 255 feet tall.
Oh yeah, I guess. You're right. So it wouldn't have. Yeah, so it never was, huh?
Maybe Fujiyama is not as tall as you think.
It's 259.
It might not have as big of a drop.
59. Okay.
Really? Okay. Well, yeah.
I'm still close.
Anyways,
okay.
Fujiyama
Good ride.
is my favorite roller coaster in Japan by just a hair, because it's like everything I love about a good aero ride, except even weirder. And so
it did
aggressive.
so many different little things. Like it had some major drops and airtime hills that it gave you like ejector air. Had some really fast turns that were smooth.
Lots of force.
And then at the end, it does this like zigzag thing where it zigzag
it's like
airtime
hill zigzag.
And it hits this brake run.
Like
really
it feels
fast.
like it's deliberately trying to throw you into your seatmate's lap, which is really interesting. Like it's really fun. Like It was amazing. That was the one of all the rides I'm glad
definitely a back row ride
that
too.
we got to. Oh yeah, we rode it in the back row both times, and I was like, "This is."
Yeah.
So it aged well.
Now,
yeah.
Yeah, they maintained it well, and everyone seemed to love it. It was the only ride running at a decent capacity.
Yeah, and
like,
it wasn't
they were
just
actually
us.
pushing out
We
trains.
have some unpopular opinions. We're kind of hot take kings a lot of the time, but
Sure.
Fujiyama being the favorite coaster of the day was not an unpopular
I think most
opinion.
people were like most surprised by that.
Because for a lot of people, Darampa was disappointing. Takabisha was
Takabisha.
Ijanika scared a lot of people.
Also, a lot of people did not get
people.
did not get an Ijanika because it's kind of X2 except it has only 5 vehicles. And that was the thing when it rode next. It only has 5 vehicles, and dispatches were awful because you had to take off your shoes, and you have to take off your shoes, put them in a shoe cubby, and then there's like 3 different seat belts, and then there's the actual restraint.
Yeah.
So like just
It's
getting
like a fighter pilot
thing,
harness on top of your X2
restraints.
harness.
They're pretty intense. So dispatches were absolutely miserable, and it was raining pretty
It was
hard.
open for like an hour. I mean, we got really lucky. We were one of the last trains.
The line was already estimated to be 2 hours, and we were like, so we paid for a front of the line passes. You can buy it at
we
the
did
ride.
front of the line passes for every ride at the park.
Okay.
And we got on the last train.
It was. We spent about $60 USD each to ride 5 rides, and it was the best $120 we've ever spent, and probably ever will spend.
Because a lot of people did not get the Big 4, and we got all Big 4 on because we just paid to do it.
Yeah. We got on.
We only in Japan once.
And the fact that the park even operated the rides at all was a miracle. I adhere to the ideology that they were going against their instincts.
It was raining pretty hard. I'm not gonna lie. We rode Ijanika in the pouring rain
for the fact because Ace was there.
And it was
because
insane.
I've never heard of the park running anything in any condition of rain ever. And every ride we got that day was a rain ride except for Darampa.
And they were running 2 trains on everything.
And they were running 2 trains on everything.
Oh wow.
So it was actually so much better than what we were led to believe based on the conditions. Yeah, the lines were long. Yeah, the dispatches were terrible. But you know what? The rides were open. The quick passes are not that expensive. They're about the same price as a ride.
They're expensive, but not that expensive if you travel the world to go ride these things.
Right, yeah. Well, they're like this. It's comparable to like the ones they have at Busch Gardens and SeaWorld. It's like $10 for like a Montu quick pass or whatever. These were $15. But yeah, we and the locals don't seem to do them that much. Like the lines for the quick pass, once you got the quick pass and like you got on immediately.
Yeah. So how these Zekios work is there are vending machines in front of every ride, and a vending machine, instead of like having different drink options, it pretty much just has different ride times. So you click on the ride time, it's still available. You click on it, and it just prints your receipt, and the ride time goes away after a couple of receipts. So we were just lucky because we bought them right at the moment and we got them for all the rides.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know on busy days they run out really quick.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have that access.
Yeah, a lot of people. The park wasn't very busy because of the weather, and the people probably weren't
I
expecting.
think it was bad.
So we lucked out. That was a divine experience being there.
We should probably talk a little bit about the next coaster we rode, Ijunaika, because that
Ijunaika.
was probably the biggest surprise.
That's probably one of the most terrifying things I've ever done.
Like the biggest impact of any coaster I've ridden. Like X2 is really, really good, but X2 is tame. Just basically tame kiddie coaster version of Ijunaika. Ijunaika is much taller, much faster. It does way more scary things.
If X2 was the size of Goliath and was actually trying to kill you, it would be Ijunaika.
And it was smooth. People were saying it was rough, but we had such a great and smooth experience. I mean, super padded. All of our trains
We
are
sat
really padded.
in the second to last car. I was on the outside too. I was on the wing, and I thought it was really smooth, but aggressive.
Mhm.
Like
Really
to
aggressive.
the point where I don't really remember the second half of the ride at all. Like my
One thing I
peripheral
remember the
vision
most-
went away. My senses, like at one point, I left my body, and I was watching us riding, like rolling into the brake run. Like I thought maybe I died because I was
Coaster
like,
God.
"Is this?" I was like, "Is this what happens when you die? Like you're automatically like up in the ether, and you're watching the events unfold beneath you on Earth. Like, oh, that's how it happens." So that happened in the brake run, and I was like, "Wow."
I think the craziest part of the ride isn't just that it does everything H2 does, but a little bit differently, like having backwards flight to lights, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. I think the most impactful part of the entire ride is the brake run. So, like, no, seriously, people won't expect it. This thing is absolutely crazy. And in right as you think you're finally about to stop, instead of just, like, leaning on your back into the brake run, it flips forward,
Yeah.
and you're braking facing the catwalk
That
below
was
you.
That was the leave my body part. Like I
So,
really
like-
felt myself. I went in one direction, and the
ride
train
is over pretty
went
much.
in another direction.
Or almost.
I swear.
And then you just flip forward, and you're going backwards, facing forward towards the ground, over the catwalk, over this piece of metal, and you're flying over that. I can't believe they even designed it like that. It was absolutely the craziest part of the ride, was the brake run.
Everyone's like, "Oh, Alan Schilke, your RMC designs are your greatest work," and we're like, "No,
You should know
no."
this.
Yeah,
guys,
this is
like,
it.
YouTube the brake
Right
run.
here.
Do that
This
for me,
is,
please. You'll
yeah.
understand.
Alan Schilke is a madman. Like because there's just nothing. Nothing could have prepared us for this. We were scared because we'd heard that it was painful.
People even on the tour said it was painful, but I must
Yeah,
disagree.
there were like a handful of people on the tour who wrote it, and they hated it. A lot of them hated it.
Because it was too intense, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, maybe other people don't want to feel like they actually were killed on this ride. Like maybe that's
No, it's
a
intense.
unique.
It depends on what
a
you
unique-
expect from a coaster, you know? Some people are more like, okay, I like to have a bit of intensity, but more the feeling the elements. Otherwise, other people are like me and say like the more thrilling, the better. So
That's what's so funny about like Fuji-Q in general is like they have these roller coasters that are so over the top aggressive in a region where like
Everything is
a
mild.
lot of the roller coasters are really tame. You know, like rides like Bandit, which are just or even Thunder Dolphin, even like the big rides are pretty gentle. And then Fuji-Q is like, nope, we're gonna break y'all in. Like, get ready. The fourth coaster and the most recent of the major coasters,
Was Takabisha.
Takabisha. Great ride. I love
Gerstlauer.
Eurofighters. Yeah.
Tallest drop. The steepest drop in the world at 121 degrees. Very good ride, actually. I think I liked that one a lot more than I thought I would.
The rain was getting
Kinda
really,
just forgot
really
about it,
hard
but it
by
was
that
great.
point. By the time we rode it, we had already ridden.
I couldn't see anything. My
I
eyes were
think we
closed.
had gotten the
entire
other
ride.
three, and I think we had ridden Fujiyama a second time before we even got the Takabisha credit.
No,
didn't
I think we were
Or did or
Takabisha
did
because we wanted to get all the credits.
But I mean, the rain was especially the part where it's like half a launch coaster and half a normal Eurofighter. The launch coaster part, it goes 72 miles per hour. It's not even the fastest or the second fastest coaster at this park. That's not even the third fastest coaster at
It's the
this park.
slowest of the big four.
It's 72 maximum speed.
I think it's
the slowest
62
of the
even.
four. 62
Yeah.
miles per hour?
I'm looking
okay.
up all the
Are you looking up
the
Roller Coaster
facts. I
Database?
think it's 60. It says
It was
62.
that works. That makes more sense maybe because I don't know. But it was fast and the rain was like needles.
Yeah.
the face, and so a lot of my ride, my eyes were closed.
Yeah, I didn't see much of the ride. It gets hurt a lot. Trying to reveal it, my face hurt. But overall, the ride was good. I liked it a lot.
Eurofighters
That's
tend
why we
to
got the
be
credit.
rough, though. Was it rough?
Actually,
No,
it was not.
totally
It was really
smooth.
smooth. It was cool.
And my thinking was like, well, it was the lowest priority, mostly because they're building a clone of it in New Jersey.
Yeah.
A near clone of it that's going to be
It's
slightly
still a cool
steeper.
credit because I
Yeah.
feel like that's one of those like Facebook wall posts I get from all these people that know like roller coasters.
A
so that's so
BuzzFeed
sick.
video of like the 10
Oh
craziest
look!
coasters.
Have you done this crazy coaster in Japan? And I can say yes, I
And
have.
it's like, yeah, it's
Yes, there, I did.
they're building one in New Jersey. It's not cool anymore, I promise.
But overall, Fuji-Q Highland's cool. It's really small. It's kind of everything is like dark colors. Everything is black,
They
gray,
have a
and
flying
white.
theater.
I never really
That
got
was
to see
Oh.
it.
fantastic.
And what?
Fuji Airways, which is just a Fuji Mount Fuji themed soaring over.
Okay, the cool
Mount
thing
Fuji.
is, every single scene is Mount Fuji.
It's just Mount Fuji.
like different approaches.
Over
Oh,
and
it's
over.
over flowers, Mount Fuji.
Yeah.
Oh, cloud, Mount
Yeah.
Fuji.
I mean,
oh, city,
it's
Mount
just-
Fuji. There's at least 24 scenes with Mount Fuji in it, and it's like pretty much all the
There's a
scenes.
part where there's a thunderstorm and it starts raining inside the theater.
And then Mount Fuji.
And then you do a barrel roll and then Mount Fuji.
That's hilarious.
And then you land
And you see Mount
eventually,
Fuji.
and after like 4 minutes of flying, and there's Mount Fuji in the background.
So yeah, it's pretty much just a bunch of Mount Fuji, but it's such a wonderful ride.
And
nonetheless.
it didn't close. That was after we'd ridden all the
And it
all the
rained-
coasters
it was
were
raining in the
closed,
rain,
but
yeah.
we were still at the park. We're like, we need to do this. We'd heard it was great, and it was wonderful.
It was not disappointing.
Totally delivered.
And they got a cool Ferris wheel. I mean, that's honestly, if I have a Japanese episode, everything is about Ferris
Big
wheels.
Ferris
there.
wheels
Big Ferris wheels everywhere.
that are
lovely,
so big
amazing.
that like
ride
you
them all.
go around once, and it's like a 5-minute process.
10 minutes sometimes. Yeah.
And just like a total like quintessential. We did them every
We
chance
did
we
at
got.
least like a dozen giant Ferris wheels. Some of which were really high tech, like Yokohama Cosmo World near Tokyo, where they have that vanished dive coaster thing.
Mhm, which was terrible.
It's a horrible coaster. It looks
Awful.
cool, but horrible. Their Ferris wheel is honestly really cool. It's like really high tech. They have like iPads inside, and you can like it tells you where to look to see Mount Fuji, where to look to see Tokyo.
Also,
Like, Ferris
what's
wheels are
cool about
cool
that
there.
Ferris wheel is like it's wider than the actual perimeter of the park.
It sticks out over the city.
So like on both sides, it hovers outside of the property
Yeah.
line. So
yeah, it goes over like an apartment complex on one side. It's
Yeah.
pretty
That's
cool.
also a Facebook post coaster, though. The diving coaster.
vanish.
Yeah.
We really wanted to like that ride, but the trains were so
Just trying to get
uncomfortable.
into the train, I wasn't so much paying
We
the entire
already
ride,
knew.
and then transitions were horrible. Like even if it were a comfortable ride vehicle, the transitions would have been uncomfortable.
And people were like, "Oh my god, have you ridden this?" And we're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "How was it?" And we're like, "It was bad."
It literally is only it's just cool to look at.
We wanna be
sat around
excited.
it for we sat around the pond for like 30 minutes watching it go. That was fun,
So much fun to photograph. What a fun ride to like enjoy on the
but
ground,
like not on
not
the ride.
riding it.
Yeah.
for sure.
Is that also? Doesn't it have a special splash? That park, log flume.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the log flume
was
is awesome.
great.
It's like a
Great
little
log
roller
flume.
coaster flume.
There's a
But not
couple of
really.
log flumes in Japan where like they turn them into a game because this is Japan. And you go down the drop and you scream as loud as you can, and your scream will get the louder you scream, the higher your score is. And there's a scoreboard at the end of the ride, and they have like daily totals and stuff.
How
And
close?
There was a couple
How
parks.
close to the condos is that?
Pretty
Pretty
well.
close. I mean, everything in Japan is pretty
Everything
close.
is soundproofed in Japan.
Okay.
I mean, everything is just thick concrete walls, anyways, because of earthquake
Yeah.
regulations. So, I would imagine that it's not that the sound pollution isn't an issue at any of these parks. I mean, like there's theme parks just on top of each other and roller coasters on top of dwellings, and like when you're inside the shopping mall that Thunder Dolphin is on top of, you can't feel that the coaster is
Oh.
around you from inside. You can't hear
Mhm.
it.
Coast is pretty much one giant suspension
Yeah.
bridge anyway.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay, let's fly on a dinosaur
Okay.
Oh, it's
Okay.
smooth, Sven. I
That
like
was
to
that.
Osaka.
So the most disappointing park of our trip was Universal Studios
Oh.
Japan.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, Tobu Zoo was the most disappointing. The
Tobu
animals
was
were
so
miserable.
sad. I forgot I cried there.
That was awful.
true.
I
Okay,
mean,
let's
the
just
park
forget
was really
Tobu Zoo
nice to us.
exists.
Okay,
There's this
which park are we talking
animal
about?
rights. Okay, we're gonna go to Tobu Zoo for just
Tobu
one
Zoo.
moment.
Okay.
Tobu Zoo is an amusement park in Tokyo, and they have
They have Intamin Megalight, and it's not that good.
Fine, it was fine.
And they have a good wooden coaster.
And a wooden
Regina.
coaster that's also in Intamin.
Now they also have a bunch of animals that are
Animals.
really sad and live in concrete.
That's
cages.
why you cried. Oh.
In Japan,
That's why I cried.
animals don't have rights.
Neither do hardworking people, but
Work culture is kind of intense.
they're always very nice.
Sorry
which is
if we
great.
offend anyone in advance.
We love Japan.
We
Kawaii.
love Japan.
Okay. So, anyways, that's why we didn't like Tobu Zoo. So that was disappointing. But Universal was also kind of disappointing, which
It was
is what I'm
expensive.
trying
Okay,
to get to.
hang on. Regina, is she good?
Yeah. She was
Ooh,
lovely.
she good.
She's so well maintained. You'd think they would throw some of that money, some of that maintenance budget over to the camels that are dying,
No, the elephants.
the elephants that are caked in mud with no
So
water,
sad. It was
with the
pretty
cheetahs
bad.
lying on the concrete pads.
It was really bad. It was honestly like it was the very first park that we did in Japan with a tour, and I was like,
Yeah, I
well,
was like, oh my god,
it's this kind of country.
get out of here.
Okay.
Having said that, Universal was
Flying Dinosaur was great.
Flying Dinosaur was not running the way I was thinking it would running capacity wise because the station is set up really weird where like you enter in the middle of the station and then you exit on either side of the station. So it's either they run 2 trains or they run 4 trains.
Because of the loose article.
But this is Universal Orlando. I mean, this is Universal Japan. So running 2 trains
They
still
have the
means the
third
line
highest
is like
attendance
the 3rd highest attendance
of
in the
any
world.
park in the world.
And it's the busiest Universal park. Yet their operations were nowhere near where they should have been, which was what disappointed me because everything felt like a money grab. We spent like $300 on getting
Express passes.
from the line passes to stuff to make sure we rode everything. Which honestly, when I go to Universal Park on a weekday in September,
Also, we were
October,
there from
I don't wanna-
we were there
I
from
don't wanna
10 a.m.
say that.
until midnight.
Oh wow.
so yeah, so there's like a 2-hour line for Jurassic Park River Adventure, but they're using one station of the 2. There is a 4-train possibility to run on the Flying Dinosaur, but they run 2 trains and the line is like 3.5 hours. So we were forced to either pay to ride or to use single rider lines.
The single rider lines are great because the wait times are usually way less
Inflated.
than what
And they're
they
not actually true, yeah.
say they are, which is not something that people would generally know. Our theory is that they're either trying to cover their butts so that if the wait for some reason is that long, no one complains. Not that anyone would complain anyway because it's Japan, but or they inflate the wait times so that they can sell the express passes. Either way, we didn't want to gamble with it, so we did the express pass. And aside from how much money we spent, I mean, we also spent a lot of money on souvenirs. And honestly,
Keychains?
Tokyo Disney souvenirs were a lot less expensive. Yes,
Yeah,
keychains,
I think the main issue for us is that we spent 3 days at Tokyo Disney, 2 at Disney Sea, 1 at Disneyland, and it was great. It was affordable. We were like, wow, this is awesome. Like operations are on point, staff is amazing, cost of food is not that expensive. Cost of souvenirs at Tokyo Disney were
cheaper than
cheaper
Disneyland,
than Disney
cheaper
World
than
or
Disney
Disneyland.
World.
And
A
then we-
one-day ticket to either park. They don't do park hoppers unless you buy at least
for
3
4
days.
Yeah, 3 days. That's right.
So you do, like if you buy it for Tokyo Disney, if you buy a 3-day ticket, you still have to do 1 day at one park, 1 day at the other park, and then your 3rd day is a park hopper. Or if your 4-day ticket, your 4th day is a park hopper. $74 USD. 74.
For Tokyo
That's
Disney
it.
Sea. What?
Or Tokyo Disneyland, whichever. Like,
But then Universal Osaka or Universal Japan, so much more expensive just to get in, just to get on some rides and have to pay for express pass. And then souvenirs and food were outrageous. Vegetarian items were not on any of the menus unless you specifically spoke to a chef about it, which after trying 4 restaurants, I decided to go and do that because I was over it. So there was a lot of those things where I was like, wow, you're like the top tier star park of Universal. You are technically sort of competing with Disney, even though you're a different city. People know what USJ means. Everywhere we went, everyone's like, "Oh, USJ!" Like it's a household name.
USJ.
But the experience did not lend itself to that. So great rides, definitely. But I just thought it was more of a money grab.
In their defense,
Like
it's
the milk
basically Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure
In one
combined
park.
in one game.
Oh wow.
Which is why we needed 14
It's a
hours
large
to do it all.
park. It's a very large park.
Like doing both Universal Florida parks in one day and having the park hopper in one day is what it feels like to do just Universal Studios
I
Japan.
kind of feel like that park was built like USF, like Universal Studios Florida.
Yeah.
And then they started expanding,
Yeah.
and then suddenly they ran out of room for a second gate, so they kind of just put everything in the first gate.
So it's just
And now they charge prices
it's almost
to
like
make up for it.
it's almost like Europa Park level, where like this park could easily be 2 gates, but it's just a big run-on sentence of a theme park.
It just became bigger and bigger, and I feel like they really, like Universal Studio Florida has a higher profit margin because they have 2 parks they can charge for.
Yeah.
And I feel like Universal Japan kind of became this place where they wanted to make as much money as they would have made out of 2 parks, but they tried to make the money from 1 park.
Yeah.
So Universal, their Express Pass system works that they give you a selection of rides and you have to pick a certain amount of, like, it's an either or. So it's like, oh, you want to ride either Jurassic Park or you want to ride Jaws. So you have to pick one, but you can't pick both.
And they still have Jaws, and it was great.
Or like, oh, you want to ride Harry Potter or you want to ride Flying Dinosaur? Well, I want to ride both, but you can't pick both. You have to pick either one.
Yeah.
So, like, that's how the system is set up. So even if you pay big money for the Express Pass, you can ride everything. You have to buy different packages.
Bad stuff aside, the ride roster there is out of control.
Flying Dinosaur is awesome.
Outstanding ride.
Hollywood Dream Backdrop is amazing.
Unbelievable. I mean, those are 2 of the best B&Ms in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And Hollywood Dream may not look like much, but that ride is outstanding.
It was feisty. It was good.
And riding it backwards, which is they have a separate attraction. Yes, we counted it as 2 credits. I know. I'm sorry. It has its own name. It's called Backdrop. It has its everything, and so it runs 4 trains, 3 forward-facing trains, and then 1 backdrop train. Backdrop is not. It's the only attraction that's not an express pass. So the first thing we did was we ran in there and we got in line standby for backdrop to get our credit.
How long did you wait?
20.
So the park just opened and you waited only 20.
Yeah.
You already 20 minutes.
Very first thing we did is we had with our ACE tour, with our tour of the country, we had a 7-ride special express pass included, but it didn't include all the coasters, like the pick and choose thing. So we purchased another purchase
just to make sure we
package.
got multiple rides on Flying Dinosaur and stuff.
Then we ran over to
backdrop,
and we waited only about 20 minutes to backdrop.
Yeah.
The lines really did get much worse as the day went on. Like, it really wasn't that bad the first hour or two. People were still kind of arriving.
Yeah.
So that was not bad.
But yeah,
it was
great
really
ride, really thrilling, fabulous airtime, music, great music. The music choices, they had two J-pop songs, one of which was written specifically for the ride, and then Happy by Pharrell, Shake It Off, Taylor Swift, and Bad, Michael Jackson.
Yeah, only 5 options, unlike Rip Ride Rocket.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
This is a precursor to Rip Ride Rocket, and in some ways it's better, in some ways it's not as good, but still just a fabulous ride.
Did you know
Forward 2 was
at
a fun
some
ride
point
forward.
it was rumored for Plopsaland in Belgium, that ride?
Really?
Really.
The copy
like
of it?
a
Or
similar
was it originally
coaster
supposed to go there?
that one.
Like a B&M music coaster. Like Happy Valley Beijing
Yes.
got a version of it. Doesn't look as good as
Doesn't look as good.
USJ's. And then Flying Dinosaur is the best flying coaster ever. And for me, it's because unlike Tatsu and Manta and there's a lot of meandering that goes along where it's just kind of like, oh, you're drifting this way. Oh, I'm a leaf in the breeze kind of. Flying Dinosaur hauls ass the whole way.
A bunch of elements.
It has a real first drop. It just nosedives into the midway. It does a 540-degree barrel roll
into the sky,
into an Immelman, and then nosedives into the crowd again, and then into a pretzel loop that's buried in the ground. I mean, it is just rapid fire.
I think my favorite part is after the pretzel loop, there's this airtime hill.
There's an airtime
hill, and it shoots you over the water, and you have this.
Oh, wow.
It's a beautiful ride, on-ride, off-ride.
Rapid fire flyer.
But,
I mean...
Nice.
A friend of mine didn't like it that much because it was too intense.
It's honestly, especially after a long day. Like in the morning, I ran all right, but at night,
we did. We rode it at night, and we were pretty much mush when we came back to the station. Still better than Tatsu though.
Tatsu's pretzel loop.
The bottom of the pretzel loop on Tatsu is like mortar and pestle level, and
where you leave your body.
Kinda. Yeah,
you look at yourself going through the ride.
Fun. You feel like you're vibrating into molecules and drifting away from everything. No, Flying Dinosaur is intense, but there's not as much of that prolonged G-force exposure.
Everything's
the
quick.
bottom of the pretzel on Flying Dinosaur is snug. It feels like the boomerangs on Afterburn and Montu, where you're at the part that's below the ground, and you're just going so fast, and you're back out before you even realize it. So I think that's the secret to a good flying coaster is instead of the drifting and the kind of hanging and this thing just pummels you, but in a good way.
I'm pretty sure Flight of the Hippogriff was your favorite coaster of the day, though.
Oh yeah,
actually, it was Space Fantasy.
Well, I'm looking up that ride on RCDB, and it has like 6 names.
It's a VR. It has a VR overlay.
Now
right
the name
now.
is called
Oh my
Lupin
God.
the Third Car Chase Ride.
Oh.
Oh, okay, there we go. A new one.
That's an anime I've actually heard
Okay.
of. When we went, it was Neon Genesis Evangelion, something,
Exactly.
and it's a Mac spinner, but for the VR, they lock the cars
From spinning.
and they only load the forward-facing seats.
Okay.
Horrific.
I know. I see
Horrific
you shaking your
capacity
head.
again,
You're
once
like,
more.
why is it like this?
But the cool thing is, even though everyone got a headset, and there were a million staff members on the movie,
And the VR wasn't
walkway,
even that good. The consolation prize was that the effects inside, the practical effects in the ride still work.
So you take off your headset, even though they're like really strict about not taking it off. You take it
Yeah.
off.
I know. Sorry.
And you look
Normally
around,
we
and-
wouldn't disobey park policies, but
and all the
like,
effects were working. It was really, really cool.
Yeah.
It's a really nice
the practical
ride.
effects for Space Fantasy are really fun.
Like better than Spaceman.
Well, that's not saying a whole lot.
I know, but just so
Yeah.
people don't think it's just another Spaceman.
It used to be E.T. They had the E.T. adventure there for like 10 years, and
No one
it
cares.
just didn't.
So
it
they
didn't
took
stick.
rid of it.
I thought E.T. was pretty kawaii,
Cool.
but apparently the people of
It
Osaka.
was
did
out of
not.
this world good.
Oh my god!
so, How did Harry Potter compare to the Universal,
That's my favorite one.
to the Orlando or the Hollywood version?
Ni hao, Harry Potter.
My favorite. I mean, they're Harry. They're. Can you not? You're getting tired. The Escape from Gringotts there is my favorite one of the three because. Oh no, sorry. The other
Forbidden
one.
Journey.
Someone's getting tired.
Escape from Hogwarts it's my favorite of the three because it's a Japanese dub. So like all
Oh my
of the
God.
actor scenes and stuff are still there, but they have Japanese voiceovers.
Is it though?
Like,
I don't remember.
no, it totally
It's in
did.
English.
Because Hermione is speaking Japanese and her lips are not moving with like an old Godzilla movie that's dubbed in English but in reverse. Oh my gosh, it was my favorite. I loved it so much for so many reasons. Not the least of which being that I'm like really sick of the dialogue on that ride, and it makes me feel better to not have to hear it because I don't understand Japanese, and I want to keep it that
Babe,
way.
we had literally not ridden. You had only ridden Forbidden Journey like twice before you rode the Japanese
I
one. You
forget,
can't be like, I'm
like,
sick of
3
that.
times. No, I love Harry Potter, but not that much. Like I know what they're saying. I know what happens in the ride. Like
It's caving in.
yeah,
Watch out.
keep up, Ron. No, okay. Like I've had enough. I know what they're saying. Hearing the Japanese dub and like
It's not safe.
seeing the lips move on the actors and then the Japanese voiceover on top became my favorite part of the ride. So
Inspector Patronum. Get away from them.
Expecto Petroleum.
Inspector Skin Rash.
um,
So that was great.
And
yeah.
And they have the Black Lake, which is cool. So the castle reflects from the water, and it's all a little bit more scenic.
yeah, they say that the Harry Potter area feels more authentic because it's in a forest.
It's very secluded.
Now, the only issue is they're building
Nintendo Land.
Nintendo Land right next to it, so all we saw was a bunch of cranes and big show buildings being built.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you have to walk. You have pretty much the Harry Potter area is located like on
It's
the
right next to
outside of the
Jaws,
park, but you
and-
have to like literally navigate all around Jaws and
Yeah.
around the kiddie area to get there. So this is a
It's a
long
nice
walkway
build-up.
through the Forbidden
Very
Forest to get there,
grand. You feel like you're really taken to another place.
which is great, unlike the other ones, especially Hollywood's.
Yeah. So
And
that all worked. And then the Harry Potter parade sequence. They have a nighttime
yeah, I was
parade
going
that
to
has
ask about that. How is
4
that?
Yes. It's a parade that comes in 4 parts. Harry Potter, Transformers,
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World,
Minions.
and Despicable Me.
Of
And
course.
so it's like 3 miniature parades put together that
4.
have like, or 4, yeah. They each have like 3 or 4 floats and like projection mapping on the buildings and
Lots
stuff.
of actors.
Oh.
But
my
like it was
goodness.
so incredibly good. We went through the park 3 different times to
It
go watch it
zigzags
over and
all
over
over
again.
the Hollywood and New York area. And like we said, this is a big park.
Mhm.
So like we caught
goes
the
on for a
parade
while.
3. They do the parade once, but we watched it 3 times because we caught it at the beginning, ran around to another place, and where it started again, and then kept running around. And because the Harry Potter stuff especially was like.
It's seriously the best, and this is not an exaggeration. This is seriously the best parade I've ever seen or ever like,
Yeah.
even though it existed. I mean, the Harry Potter stuff is great. There's a lot of acting going on. There's just show sequences
They have
that
like
last
a
5
little
minutes.
Hogwarts on wheels, and it gets attacked by
Hogwarts
Dementors,
Express,
and the
Death
students
Eaters.
perform. Or yeah, the Death Eaters.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, and the students perform the Patronus spell
all together at once.
And it's in unison, like with the music. It's all choreographed, and the sequences happen in like every and they're like 5 minutes long, I guess, and then they reset. I couldn't.
I mean, the Harry Potter stuff is absolutely amazing. But even if you're like not that big of a Harry Potter fan, the Jurassic World stuff is really cool too.
Oh
There's all these trucks, and there's like all these giant animatronic dinosaurs that are walking off the trucks and breaking through.
They had
into the audience.
Costume characters that were velociraptors escaping from the floats and running into the.
It was
into
incredible.
The streets and
I've never seen anything that amazing in my entire life. Like that. I mean, that completely was the redeemer of the day.
Yeah.
That was like, okay, great.
It was a long day, and we spent a lot of money, but the parade, which required no express pass and no standing in line, really made up for it. Mm-hmm. But it was late. It was 9 p.m. when the parade started, and a lot of our colleagues had already gone back to the hotel, and you guys missed it.
Oh, yeah.
Best attraction.
The best thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
So I'm not usually a big parade person, but that was like life-changing.
It was hard. It's Disney parades I love, but I feel like once you've seen one, you've kind of seen them all. This was... Universal Florida has a parade, but it's pathetic. It's
pathetic parade.
I can't even look at it when
Universal's super pathetic parade. It's really bad.
Whereas, like, if Universal Florida had this parade it was brand new for our visit. Like, it was a 2018 edition. If Florida had that parade, people would be buying.
I think it's going to come to Florida because they already use projection mapping on the buildings of Florida for their new nighttime celebration.
Mm-hmm. Also, they designed the floats in Florida.
Okay.
Like, they were built here
at Universal
and then shipped to Florida or to Osaka. So I'm like, they need this parade.
I'm pretty sure.
So
people will
and
come.
Japanese people were already sitting there for 2 hours probably beforehand to watch it.
Oh, they were so into it.
Absolutely.
And they're into everything.
Yeah, like Tokyo Disney, the Universal Studios Japan fans are copious, and instead of like the Mickey Mouse ears everywhere, it's a
lot of Sesame Street
and
Snoopy
and Hello Kitty,
which.
And Hello
Kitty. Yeah, so in America, it's kind of like SeaWorld Parks Entertainment has all the Sesame Street stuff. Cedar Fair has all the Peanuts and Snoopy stuff. And then Six Flags has Warner Brothers, that sort of thing. Universal doesn't have too much.
Minions.
But in the United States, in Japan, sorry, I'm getting tired. In Japan, they kind of were able to buy all those rides up. So they have pretty much everything that you can think of all the United States theme parks. All those characters are all living in.
I guess that's kind of why, like, we figured, like, maybe that's why it's so expensive. Is because they have all these IPs.
Yeah.
Like, they have one area that's called Universal Wonderland, and it's Snoopy and Sesame Street and Hello Kitty in one area, coexisting harmoniously.
But to wrap up Universal, like, when I watch the site, the amount of rides... Like, the number doesn't look that high, though. And still, you say that you needed, like, 12 hours to do the whole park?
14 hours, yeah.
Well, that's, again, reflecting on the operations that we talked about. Because, like I said, it's not a busy day at all by, like, Universal Osaka standards. But there's, like, a 3-hour line for Flying Dinosaur, 2-hour line for Jurassic Park, 2-hour line for Gekion VR coaster, an hour-and-a-half line for Hollywood Dream.
I guess it just felt like, they've got 5 coasters, and they've got,
they got Minions,
Spider-Man,
Harry Potter,
not Hulk,
no Hulk,
that's not there.
Jurassic Park.
So basically, every ride just has a long queue, and
especially
I guess because long queues and it's just a big park.
Because you have a much larger lagoon in the middle of the park than you have in Florida. So like the park itself is also spread around the large lagoon. Harry Potter's located far outside of it.
Far away from everything else.
And it's again, I think that you could do it in one day if the parks were run like they run Universal Orlando Resort, but the park wasn't run that way. The park was run much less like capacity focused, and that really made for it taking longer to get.
So either you do it in one day with a fast pass, or you do it in 2 days.
2 days.
Yeah, you do it in 2 days regularly.
They've
you
got
do
really
it in
nice
one
hotels,
day
but they're
using
expensive.
Like several packages of different kinds of fast passes to get on your stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's wrap up this episode and consider this as part 1.
Yeah, I agree.
That
with you.
way, in part 2,
like an hour in,
we
we
can
know when you're done.
discuss
Yeah.
We'll talk about
Disney
Tokyo
and
Disney and Nagashima Spa Land and
any other park that ride you've done.
Port Nagoya Seaquarium. and some other stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We'll continue in a couple days, and we'll release another episode 5, which will be the second part of the Kawaii Coaster Kings adventure.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Well,
there
maybe it'll be a part
we'll do
3.
a
We'll probably
top-
have a regular
we'll
episode in between. Or
We'll do a regular episode. We have to talk about our
Okay.
Six Flags Great Adventure
It's
visits.
true. We rode King of Ka. It was absolutely insane.
Wild.
It was cool.
We'll tell you all
and
about
I'm
it.
going to
I mean, you already know about it.
and I'm going to
probably.
do an update on Fury at Bobby Island, which released something
You're
very.
going like today, right?
Yeah, I'm going to shower and I'm going.
That's
Okay.
awesome. I'm so excited for
Alright.
that. We've got a lot of new content on the website. We're launching a new set of articles that we bring it back from 2016. It's called The 5. So we have a little listicles every week with some of our favorite coasters,
top
some of the
5
best
stuff.
coasters, top 5
We're
stuff.
doing
It's
a
awesome
Japan list. That's like our top 5 Japan coasters to kind of tie in
with this episode.
Yeah.
We released as very first website the SeaWorld Orlando 2020 coaster information. So make sure if you haven't heard about that yet, which is impossible, you have to go to our website as well for that, thecoasterkings.com. You're welcome for that in advance.
Yep.
We have a lot of other reviews live. We're doing pretty good. We're pushing a lot of content lately. So every day we try to post something on the website. So make sure to stay tuned on thecoasterkings.com as well.
Yes, and we hope you like it, of course. And any feedback is always welcome.
Yep.
And share our podcast,
Yeah.
people.
You like talking about roller coasters and stuff with,
Wow.
with people who are tired.
Original. Alright.
With people who are at their best when they're delirious. 'Cause
Alright.
It's funnier that way.
And this is what I'm going to say. Coaster Kings Radio, out.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Have a good day.